Welcome to our conversation on Beyond Generations. Now, if you're like me, then this is not your first conversation about generations. Over the past 30 years in HR and leadership, given a fair number of workshops on generations, and of course, we've attended a lot of generational conversations. And the typical ones, we're going to talk about this generation is, that generation is, and that typical Gen session. I don't do it, but others will be in what I'll call like a gen bashing, right? Well, how do I deal with this? How do I mitigate that? And sometimes it turns into group therapy, right? How are we all going to commiserate and take care of this situation? Well, anytime that we get into that problem solving scenario, we stop looking at the strengths and start looking at this as a problem to be solved. This one's going to be a little bit different. For those of you who are looking for that traditional generational presentation of here are the types of generations and what they are or what that groupthink is, I got one of those for you, and I'll have it out here on the site, and you can watch through that. And that's great. That's fantastic. For the rest of us who are looking for a little bit different twist, that's what this one's about. We're going to start here. We're going to start with your biggest problem. I want you to think through just what's taking up most of your time. What are your most frequent challenges? What are your greatest pain points? It's not just about in one specific person or whatever else, just in general. Chances are it's going to be people. Or if it's not, if it's one little problem or one big problem, then if you go to the next layer down, it's going to be people related. And so what we find is that business problems are really people problems, and people problems are definitely business problems. At the core, we take a look at these people problems. We say, oh, what are we going to do about this? And what area are we going to focus in on? Well, whether we're talking about generations or any other kind of people issues, right? With so many differences to focus on, when we start trying to manage these differences, we start looking at the wrong things. We start to manage the wrong approach. And by doing so, we focus on the wrong things. As my dad would say, we start majoring in the minors. And that's going to be the wrong take on this. Instead, we're going to try to avoid this perpetual blame game. You see, in this case, it doesn't matter what decade we're in or what generation we're in. The older generation is going to blame the younger generation, and the younger generation is going to blame the older generation. In fact, if we go back to the 60s, the language that the older generation is using to describe the younger generation is almost verbatim the same language. Almost verbatim. And you know what? 30 years from now, it's going to be the same language and the same terms that they're going to use to describe that younger generation. It's the same thing. Ultimately, I'm not convinced it's the generation. It's not. We're talking about people. It doesn't really matter when we break it apart and we say, what are the real issues here? You see, when we take a look at company success and what goes into it, this is the same model, and it's a basic model. We have company outcomes, and when we can define clearly what the company outcomes should be, the goals, the expectations, our priorities, when we understand what that is and clarify it so everybody knows what we're out to accomplish, I find that most people agree with that. Most people understand what we're out to accomplish, and they get behind it. If it's clear and they understand it, they say, yeah, that's why I'm here, to help you in my job, in my department, whatever it is. From there, the managers can get behind that. They can align resources, people, whatever it takes. And from there, they can also help employees with their individual performance, because then the employees can understand what it takes for them to know, be, and do to be successful. What happens most of the time, unfortunately, is that when the companies can't clarify what their what is, what their priorities are, what their goals are, then it becomes challenging for managers to know what they're supposed to be working on, or when they aren't held accountable or they're left to define for themselves what they should be working on. Then the individuals, the employees, are saying, I don't know what I'm supposed to be working on. I don't know what's expected of me. I don't know how what I'm doing actually ties into what the company is doing. That's where the confusion comes in. That's why one of the most common reasons why people leave an organization is, I don't know what's expected of me. I don't know what the future of the company is. I don't know how I'm making a difference. That's how it works. So when we view this as a problem and we start connecting these descriptors to our generations, Boomers are this, Gen X are this, millennials are this, Gen Z is this. It's not to say that these aren't some of the characteristics of people in those generations, but when we start tagging them and saying this is the cause of our problem, that causes us to lose some focus. So, for example, I was with a group a while back, and one of the biggest challenges of the managers was calling in, right? This whole procedural thing. The metric was, they're calling in sick. They're supposed to call in sick. If they're not going to make it that day, they're supposed to call in and talk to the manager. And instead, they wanted to text in. I said, okay, so what's the problem? They said, well, they're supposed to call in. I said, well, so what's the problem? Do they send you a text message? Yes. Did you get the text message? Yes. Did they send the text message prior to the time that they needed to let you know? Yes. I said, so what's the problem? The problem is that they need to call. Okay, so they text you. You found out, you knew. What are you trying to accomplish with this? Is the purpose to find out that they're not coming in so you can fill the shift? Or is the purpose to make them feel bad about calling in sick? Well, it's the responsible thing to do, but in your eyes. But understand this, when they call in, are you doing this for the person who's calling in once every 2 to 3 months because they're really sick? Or are you making the person who calls in 5 times a month do this? Well, everybody has to do it. So, well, okay. Well, let's take a look at this. For the Gen Zer, they would rather cut off the ends of their fingers than to call in and have an actual voice conversation with you. And the Gen Xer is going to go well, that doesn't make any sense. I said, I know, to you it doesn't. To them it does. You see, for us as Gen X, though, we're going to spend 10 minutes getting the voice right so it can sound really sick. Because we know that when I call you and I don't sound sick, you're going to say, you don't sound sick. Why are you calling it sick? Okay, I'm wrong. I called it dead. Because we're going to practice that for 10 minutes before we make the phone call. Otherwise, what do you want me to do? Come in sick so I can make everybody else sick? Seriously. But the Gen Zer probably spent 10 minutes crafting the message before they hit send. Same thing. Is the business purpose to find out that they're not coming in so you can take care of the shift? Or is the purpose to really make them accountable and feel bad for calling in? You see, because if it's to make them feel bad, what do? We just took that high performer and made them feel bad about taking the sick leave that we gave them as a benefit. We're telling the high performer, we don't trust you. We don't trust you to make good decisions. If you have a high performer versus a low performer or a troublemaker, treat the troublemaker separately. Take care of them individually. We have to take these into consideration. When we figure out, who's right or who's to blame, right? That's just distracting. If instead we get down to business, then we could spend more of our time figuring out what do we want. We can clarify what our goals are, what our priorities are as a company. And when we do that and we make it crystal clear, this is our what, this is where we're going, then the managers can spend more time to understand, how do I align the resources? How do I get my people in place? How do I get us to help the company achieve its goals? And from there, the manager can then also help employees understand what they need to know, be, and do to get down the line and to help contribute to the company's success. When that happens, employees get excited and they become part of the solution and they engage. Without this clarity, they don't. You see, when we define the what and then we align the goals, the how matters less because the how becomes flexible. We figure out that there are more ways than one to get to the what. And then it becomes a matter of style. Many of these problems that we consider to be generational problems, Gen Z, it's not a generational problem. They tend to be style issues. It's not about the what, it's about the how. And we find that just because they want to do things differently, it becomes a problem. When in fact, it's not a problem. It's just a different way of doing it. That's where the problems begin. Now let's consider this. A lot of times these problems aren't problems, they're symptoms. And so the symptom is, they're demonstrating this behavior, they're demonstrating this performance, and I don't like it, or something seems to be wrong. We have to take a step back and ask the first question of, is it a problem? Had a conversation about 3 days ago with a manager in aerospace, and I asked that question, the first question, which is, what is your primary problem? He said, well, it's attendance. It's attendance and turnover. They're not coming to work. I said, okay, that's great. Why aren't they coming to work? So they're just not showing up. Must be work ethic. I said, no, that's not it. That's not your problem. Well, then it's the manager. So I'm not going to argue with that. I'm sure the manager has something to do with it, but it's not your manager. Why aren't they coming to work? Eventually somebody said, they're not motivated to come to work. I said, correct. But what's the real answer? Why aren't they motivated to come to work? Then finally someone says, because they don't want to. I said, exactly. None of us will do anything unless we want to. It's the basic premise of performance or behavior. You see, when we ask that question, why do we work? It's because we want to. We're going to be willing to do it if you help meet my needs. The bottom line is this. Do they have a reason to come to work? Do they have a reason to get up in the morning and is going to work a priority versus 100 other things that they could do? When it comes to performance is a function of three things: knowledge, skills, and attitude. Kind of creating a corollary to that, if a person's not performing or not behaving, it's because of one of three things. They don't know how, they're unable to, or they don't want to. We could have the smartest person in the room. We could have the most capable person on our team. But if they don't want to do it, they're not gonna. If they don't want to come to work, they won't. And this, the younger generation, they're just going to tell you, we're not gonna. And they don't. And that's okay. But that's no different than anybody else in any other age group. The other influence is the environment within which they work. And this is controlled largely by the manager. You see, the manager is the one who's going to enforce the culture that exists. And if the manager can help them to feel welcome, feel included and part of the solution, if they can engage them and really help them to achieve success, they're going to help them to believe that they're making a difference. If the manager doesn't create that environment, if the manager does not interact and engage with them and say, no, really, you're part of this, and I want you to feel connected to this, they're not going to feel it. They're not going to have a why. They won't have that reason to come to work. It's true. Let's take a different approach to this. So we're going to understand this. And so while their generation may have an impact, they may have an influence, let's also consider where they're at in their career, because this will correlate to a large degree. Let's take a look at the entry-level folks who are coming into their career. They're new skills, new to the industry, and they're excited. But let's also look at the other end of the spectrum, those who are in, we'll call them the transition mode, those who are about 3 to 5 years to retirement. They're at a place where they have a lot of wisdom, they have a lot of tribal knowledge, and they not only have experience, but they have cycles of experience, right? They bring a lot to us. So our goal for the entry-level folks is to help them to learn quickly. We want them to engage. We want them to grow. We want them to maintain this excitement so we can hook them and keep them with us. For those who are in the transition mode, the 3 to 5 years out, we want them to remain relevant and to feel that they're relevant. So they'll continue to contribute. We also want them to feel valued and to help them to share knowledge with us. They have a lot of stuff, and when they go, they go. And so our opportunity here for the new employees is to engage them, teach them quickly, and to help them to become their best as fast as we can. The opportunity with those who are retiring soon is to help them to help others. For those who can teach and can mentor, and I recognize that not everybody's going to be a mentor, and not everybody's going to be a teacher, I get that. But those who can, let's get them to start teaching and mentoring as soon as possible. And those who can't, all of them, let's still capture their knowledge and find the best way possible. Let's break this down a little bit more. For the entry-level folks, our primary objective here is competence and confidence. In those cases, we want to get them the tools that they need to be successful. So yes, they're going to be typically younger, could be Gen Z, Gen Alpha. And you know what? Their style of work is going to be different. Is it good or bad? It's just different. And you know what? They want to make progress fast. But I'm going to tell you, Gen Xers, we wrote the book on that. We came into the workplace as free agents and we said, we're not going to follow the rules. We're going to get from here to there as fast as we can. We wrote the book and they just took our playbook and optimized it. So I'm calling us on that one. But at the same time, who doesn't want to go from the bottom of the rung up the ladder quickly? Now, they are going to come to us and they're going to lack durable skills, which what we call soft skills, and they're going to probably lack some technical skills. Yes, someone should have trained them on it. Yes, they should come in with more, but they don't. And so it's up to us to deliver that, like it or not. Now, yes, their priorities are to have flexibility, to have life balance in relationships, and whether yours are or not, they are. And if we don't build that in, they're going to go somewhere who will. And so that's what's critical about this. So we want to build in skills instruction and do it in a way that can get them there quickly. Now, how do we do that? Let's take a look at our needs as employers. We want to focus on speed to proficiency. We want to get them to a point where they're contributing as quickly as possible, but to do so effectively and efficiently. We want to focus on core competencies. We can do that faster. It's not going to take 3 to 5 years to get them to a working level. It doesn't take that long. We need to focus on delivering rapid skills deployment. Now, we do want to build in the durable skills along with the technical skills, but really as we help them to progress through this, that will help us to retain them. But it's going to take effort. Now, we're going to create some onboarding programs. We have some OJT. We have shadowing. We have mentoring programs. These can help. But looking at what they need coming into this, they need rapid progression. Like, they're coming from a world where they're going to collect coins, collect points, and go to the next level quickly. On their social media, they're looking at how many people viewed their post, how many people liked their post. They get instant gratification all day long, except for work. We need to change that. They need instant gratification in the workplace too. That's what's going to help them to stay engaged and get excited and to stay with us. So that level of engagement also ties into our recognition so that we can help them to feel like we're recognizing what they're doing, that they're doing their part. But more importantly, they want to do cool stuff, and we need to let them. So say, hey, look, you got to sit over here for the next 3 years to go from level 1 to level 2. They're not going to put up with that. And you got to do this JoJo work for the next 3 years to learn the ropes. Stick around, you'll absorb some stuff. They won't put up with that either. We have to find a way to create clear expectations, build a roadmap for progression, help them to understand how to get from here to here, and let them do it. Get out of their way. That's what we're talking about. Now, taking a look at the other end of the spectrum, those who are within 3 to 5 years of retirement. Yeah, they're typically boomers. We're going to see the early Gen Xers get in there too. They're going to be they're going to be less prone to change. And you know what? They like the structure, but they're going to be highly skilled and they're going to be perfect to be the teachers and the mentors. But we definitely have to capture their knowledge. Now, that said, we as employers, we need to capture it from the long-term employees. And we also need to capture that knowledge by having them transfer the skills to other employees. Whether it's new employees or other employees, we need that skills transfer. So we need to engage them, need to get them connected, and that's where this comes in. So we need those mentoring programs. Now, that said, we also recognize not everybody's going to be a good mentor. Not everybody's going to be a good teacher. So let's go figure out who is and get them into mentoring training, train the trainer programs, and then those who aren't good mentors and not good trainers, let's get them into a knowledge capture process. You may have some software, you may have some systems, some opportunities to go capture the knowledge, go figure out the process to do that and do it quickly. From the employee's perspective, understand this. They want to be valued. They want to feel value for what they know and what they've contributed. Along the way, they want to be recognized and respected for their expertise. So let's do it. We want to help them to pass along knowledge and expertise. As one person shared a couple months ago with me, my goal is to take everything that's up here and leave it on the table. I want to pass this along, and I will not feel fulfilled until I've passed this along to somebody else. And we need them to find a way to contribute. So we need to build a program to help them facilitate it, provide the training programs, mentoring programs, but most of all, we need to help them to find a way to leave a legacy. That will help them to be fulfilled. As we do this, what are we doing? We're matching the experienced ones with the new ones, and that will help us to accelerate the outcomes for all of us. Now, this point was reinforced this past spring as my sons, this is Jeff and Greg, my sons came to me a couple years ago and they said, "Hey, Dad, we want to go on a hike." I said, "All right, that's cool. That's great. Fantastic. Let's do it." I said, "Where are we going?" They said, "Base camp." Now, I raised them in Scouts. We took lots of trips, lots of hikes, and we went to base camps. I said, "Which one?" They said, "Everest." I'm like, all right, yeah, that's great. 2 years we prep. 2 years later, this past spring, find ourselves in Nepal. We're on this 12-day trek. Awesome. Fantastic. What I soon find is that even though we're on the same trail, we're having some different experiences. You see, Jeff's the mastermind behind this. He's the one who wanted to be here, and he's here for the adventure. So I asked him one day, it's like, "Jeff, look, for all the time and energy and investment that we made in this, we could have gone anywhere, done anything. I love this, but why Everest?" He said, "I was bored. I needed a goal." That's cool. Now, proud dad moment. I got a couple of dad tingles. I'm like, that's awesome. But he's soaked in the adventure. Greg, he's over here with the ice falls, right? He's hanging out with his new bros. From the moment we stepped off the plane in Nepal, he was making fast friends, soaking in the culture. He was there for the people and the experience. Totally was. Me, I'm having dad moments, right? I'm enjoying being there with my kids, soaking it all in, just absorbing the whole experience and trying not to fall behind as the old guy on the trip, right? But in the end, here's what I recognized. We were on the same trail, but we had different journeys. Now, there were shared journeys. There are shared moments along the way, and we had a lot of shared experiences. But we didn't know this before we started. We didn't even recognize it perhaps while we were on the trail. But definitely at the end of the trail, what we recognize is we had different journeys. We had different outcomes, though we were on the same trail. At work, same thing. We have the same objectives. We have the same goals, the same things we're working towards, but each of us is on a different journey. We have different whys. The what can be the same, but the why and definitely the how. On this trail, we had different gear. We took different approaches, but we relied on each other's strengths to help us get there and to be successful. Same thing goes in the workplace. We have different strengths. We have different ways of doing things. And we have different reasons for being there. But at the end of the day, we're still out for the same outcome. We're still trying to get to the same destination. And that's how this works. So, moral of the story is simple. How do you get everybody there? Find out the why, support each other on the hows, but ultimately you're working together to get them to the end result. And that's what you're working on. So that's it. Take care. Enjoy. Talk to you soon.